there are definitely things that people are lacking in order to thrive in this world. The biggest thing right now is just agency. There was a famous right now, social media is getting flooded with AI generated slop that doesn't help in building trust. And this is where you can see that the human component is still very important. And because in order to have disruption, you need to have a high level of trust in yourself to be able to do it. And other people also need to trust you in order to really move through this disruption period and create something new.
Trust to Disrupt, the podcast where visionary entrepreneurs, artists, creators, Web3 and crypto minds share visionary conversations and disruptive success stories. In a world where trust and attention is the new moat, your personal brand is the most valuable business asset. This is something my visionary guest today says. He's a 23-year-old entrepreneur and storyteller from Europe, exploring what he calls mindful acceleration, the art of blending technology, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. The entrepreneur scaled his marketing agency to 6 figures during his studies of computer science at the TU M in Munich, and he constantly dives deep into AI developments. With 10 plus impressive years of content creation experience, the creator has produced award-winning short films and gained millions of impressions across social media. The global citizen gained his international perspective from living in 5 countries across 4 continents and having traveled to 45 plus countries so far. He builds freedom-oriented solopreneurial businesses using emerging tech and helps others to do the same through courageously learning and building in public. You can find his futuristic yet practical ideas and perspectives mostly on LinkedIn, where he walks his talk of creating content that scaled his community to 10,000 raving fans in less than 3 months. His newest venture is also called Public, we talk about that later, AI-based systems that consider time efficiency and authenticity when leveraging a personal brand and the business behind it. So please warmly welcome Leon Sandner.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Happy to be here.
Great to have you. I'm really excited about this conversation. We both share a passion, actually, too, which is entrepreneurship and the future. And starting this off, I would absolutely love your take on the current outlook, what you see when it's the combination of both, when entrepreneurship meets the future, and also why you are so bullish on solopreneurship. So bullish that you even did some research on it, if I recall that correctly.
I did, yeah. I mean, actually, I stumbled into that research and then got bullish in the course of it. In general, entrepreneurship and the future is very closely connected because it's entrepreneurs that build the future. And I just love people that act entrepreneurial and don't have this deterministic view of the world and just wait for things to happen. But I feel like this classic corporate model is very much outdated, where you're just an employee, you follow instructions, you have your little tasks, but you don't really have freedom to do the things you're actually passionate about, and you don't get this self-responsibility. But it really is the self-responsibility that gets people to thrive and to do things beyond just the mediocre scope of what other people want from them. So I think the current model is it worked for a couple of centuries. But if we look back, I mean, Naval also really paints this picture. Like for most of human history, people were very much self-reliant. And I mean, one of them was like a woodworker. One of them had his little field where he was growing crops, but they didn't really have anyone that told them what to do, and it worked. And then came the Industrial Revolution, and suddenly we had this huge structures where everyone was just like a tiny part in a huge machine. And I think we're moving away from that again, where it's much more about your tiny contribution to the world, but in a way where you decide what you want to contribute and you really give your gifts and your talents. So I think this is a future very much to look forward to and where we will be heading. And especially now with technological advancements, the leverage the individual has become much bigger. So like right now you can reach the whole world just out of your small childhood bedroom and build crazy things that seemed impossible just a few years ago. And all of this combined, I think, will very much push us more towards this direction where every individual will become much more entrepreneurial.
Love your take on that. Well, I'll share the complete excitement about that and the future perspective. I'm aware that not everyone in the world does share it at the moment. So do you think the majority of people is ready for that? Like, I love how you broaden the scope of what we look at, not only to the last 100 years or 150, but beyond, to remind everyone, hey, we've been there before. We can do this as humanity. So what did we potentially lose along the way while we gained a lot of things? And what is then something we need to relearn?
I think, unfortunately, I've only on this world since 23 years, so I don't know exactly, but from my gut feeling, my perspective, I would say that just actively like roll up their sleeves and do things. And when I moved to Munich to study there, I was lucky enough to meet a lot of those people and got, just very excited by their contagious energy. So this is a field I've been diving in for years, and have been very passionate about connecting with all those people, and also knew from the beginning on, okay, this is the path that I want to pursue as well. But of course, there are very different kinds of entrepreneurship. And the bubble that I have been in first was this classic venture-backed type of entrepreneurship where you try to build a huge team, raise money, scale to the moon, which is of course also a valid path and also very interesting. But then when I was looking at research topics, I kind of stumbled upon the small world of indie hackers and solopreneurs, like 2 years ago, and thought, well, they do it very differently. Like, they still have the same energy, this drive, curiosity, willingness to change things, but they have a slightly different focus, and they value much more this independence, this freedom aspect that can come with entrepreneurship. And I noticed that this really resonates with me, and this is probably the thing that excites me most about entrepreneurship as well. So from then on, I noticed that this is more of the entrepreneurial path that I also want to take moving forward.
Thank you for elaborating on that. Question: I heard somewhere just a few weeks ago, someone stated out that overall in the world in the future, we may see that a broader mass of people overall will have to, or just will, become some sort of either freelancer or solopreneur. Any thoughts on that?
Yes. And Naval Ravikant, I don't know if you know him, he's a Silicon Valley investor. He has some great quotes on this, like, I don't know, a world with 7 billion people, 7 billion entrepreneurs. Of course, that's very to the extreme, but I actually also believe in that. There are definitely things that people are lacking in order to thrive in this world. Many people are lacking. And I would say the biggest thing right now is just agency. There was a famous post by Andre Karpathy a couple of months ago where he said, like, agency is much more important now than intelligence, because intelligence is a commodity by now. And I notice whenever I step out of this entrepreneurial bubble that I've been in the past years, that a lot of people really, really lack this agency. They just need people to instruct them, to give them a step-by-step guidance on what to do next. And they can only really thrive on paths where others have walked before them. And they will no longer exist because everything is changing so fast. The world is moving so fast. You won't have those paths you can just walk, because suddenly we're back to square zero and everyone has to forge their own path again. And I think actually this is a big problem. And I think for the first time, like, many people argue, hey, AI won't change anything, because as always, when there's a new technological revolution coming, there will just be new jobs created and people do different things. I believe for the first time this won't be the case, because the skills you need in order to thrive in this AI era are very, very different than the skills you needed to thrive in the previous eras. Like, when you had agriculture and then you suddenly moved into a factory, sure, instead of like working on the field, you suddenly like worked in some factory, but it still was very monotonous, like basic work. So it was very easy to do this transfer. But suddenly you have all those tools that can take over the monotonous work. So you need to think 3 steps ahead and like be able to constantly iterate your workflows, constantly questioning everything that's happening, constantly restart everything. And those are very different skills, and just on the very different attitudes you also need approaching this challenge every day. And unfortunately, I don't think many people have that. And I'm not that sure if the current generation of people will be able to gain those skills. So I actually, like, how to manage this transition into the AI era without having like complete chaos in society is something I've been thinking a lot lately. It definitely will be difficult. And unfortunately, I don't think everyone has what it takes to thrive in that time.
I appreciate your absolute honesty about that. I share your opinion. It is a challenge. There's a lot of opportunity in there. and potentially not everyone might see it and then get motivated to take steps towards it. Absolutely true. Love that. I'm making a jump now, and we'll come back to this discussion a little bit later, but I want to bring in another topic that I know that you're very passionate about, and I'm curious about, which is everything around filmmaking and storytelling. Question up front, did you see, it's a project from last year, but a creator on TikTok just pushed it out again, this African group of young people, teenagers, that created a movie with CapCut. Do you know that movie or that story?
I don't know if it's. I've seen some African kids doing cool shit and also getting sponsored from Hollywood. I don't know if it was that one.
No, it was not Hollywood. It was really through just CapCut, the app and the tool, basically.
Yeah.
The video, and it was like the most kind of insane. When you just said a couple of years, people say was impossible, and that was kind of these stories. They borrowed an iPhone from someone to film. They created a 1-hour movie. Crazy. And they cut it on like an old Samsung phone and some tablet or something, and then somebody donated them a computer and whatever, and they ended up uploading everything on YouTube, and it kind of went viral. And so, then there was this whole discussion, is Hollywood going to die now? Because if that is happening with these circumstances already, and I watched half of the movie, it's epic, especially if you look at like who created it with which devices and resources, is amazing. So, and obviously that takes it broad, right? We could discuss Hollywood or movie making, etc. But what I want to get to is the medium of video when we bring it back into entrepreneurial spaces, right? There's content creation, and over the last years, video has gained more. Obviously, we still have text, but right, I feel, and I'm curious what you say, without video, you can't. I mean, there's nothing. And then, so why do you feel this has developed, and why do you feel video content, whether it's personal brand or entrepreneurial spaces in general, has become so relevant, and where do you think will it go?
Yes. So video is definitely also the medium that is my personal passion. And I think what excites me about it is also the reason why it works so well is because there's no other medium where you can convey vibes in such a comprehensive way. Because yeah, sure, you have image, you only have the visual component, you have text, maybe you can convey some emotions and stories, but just in this combination of visuals, movement, emotion, sound, music, like all of this that is combined in the medium of video, this is just 10x more powerful than any other medium. And this is also what excited me about it. Like little Leon, when he started at like 9 years old, experimenting with his dad's DSLR, it was just a way for me to get my thoughts out there and explain them to others in a way that was the most accurate. Because sure, I can talk about what I'm thinking and my ideas, but just showing them a result that is not fully there on what I envisioned, but kind of was just very fulfilling to me, and is still very fulfilling to me. So like the last decade, I spent trying to move that gap closer between what I imagined and what I actually was able to create. And the exciting thing right now is that this gap kind of vanished. Like, yeah, there's still some technicalities in between, but now for the first time in history, pretty much everyone can convey what they're thinking, their creative ideas to the world in a very cool manner. And I think this is extremely exciting. And I think I saw those kids. And what I meant by sponsored by Hollywood, I think after they went viral, they got some sponsorships from the industry that tried to support them. And maybe using that to hold on to the power they have in the industry, because I definitely believe it will get extremely disrupted. And you can already see that Hollywood is on a decline, because the issue so far has been that the production budgets were so high that those big studios were not really willing to do some gamble, and they rather made like Avengers 55 than a completely new movie, which like really had some disruptive creative ideas to it. And this is over now, because suddenly everyone can bring their ideas to life. Suddenly we can have a much nicer ending of Game of Thrones created by some fan. And to me, this is extremely exciting. And this is also something I've been diving deep in the last weeks, because finally I feel those AI filmmaking tools are on the verge where they're really useful. It's still a pain in the ass to work with them, but the results you can get out of it with a lot of patience, a lot of trial and error, are very, very impressive.
Yeah, I've seen some of the things that you've shared, and I've seen from some other creators. And I was really impressed. I haven't started experimenting myself, but I was like, oh, this is really cool, because it's, as you say, it's getting to a point where it gets comparatively easy compared to what it used to be like, right? So it's more accessible, which brings me to the question, with all the marketing and entrepreneurship and the success that someone wants to create, we are in this age of attention, right? The currency is attention. So do you feel we can use the analogy of like Hollywood just being disrupted, declining, attention is going away from there? If you look at retail, at the consumers, if you want, in any market, right? Those who most businesses are targeting at with whatever they're offering. Is that also part of that? I mean, you kind of, through the back door, slide in an element movie that they already know, just in shorter bits and versions, and redirect the attention. Is that some part of the process, do you feel?
I think so, because I mean, as you already said in the introduction, trust is the new mode. And I also like the title of your podcast, Trust to Disrupt, because in order to have disruption, you need to have a high level of trust. Trust in yourself to be able to do it, and other people also need to trust you in order to really move through this disruption period and create something new. And I think film is the medium to create trust. And the easier it gets to tell the stories you want to tell, the better for businesses to convey to their customers on why they should trust them and why they should buy their products. So I think this is definitely a very powerful tool. On the other hand, you can see right now social media is getting flooded with AI generated slop that doesn't help in building trust. And this is where you can see that the human component is still very important, and also something I've been writing about in the past month, this taste component. Sure, like the technical element is not that hard anymore. It still requires some kind of technical knowledge to generate great videos and tell those stories, but it's not that big. What's much more important is the taste element of it, to have all those assets that AI can generate for you, but then say, okay, hey, this one actually evokes an emotion in me, and this one. And if we tie them together in a way, then we have a product that actually works and that actually helps in building trust and that people can connect with. So I'm also, at least in the storytelling part, I'm very bullish that the human will still play a very important role in the years to come when it comes to telling stories via the medium film and video, because AI can't have this taste and can't decide what's out there. It can generate a lot of stuff, but still you need to be the one merging it together in a way that works. And if you do that in the right way, then still right now leveraging media, also shorter media for shorter videos for social media, is the most powerful way to build trust for your brand.
Amazing. I totally agree. And now I'm curious what your reply on the next one is. I feel, including myself, a lot of people struggle with really the part, what makes the good video in the end, next to understanding the tech, etc., is to really tell a good story, right? I mean, you also talk about yourself as a storyteller correctly. So from your experience in the agency times, I know you've worked and collaborated with bigger organizations, but then obviously you have already also worked with entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, smaller teams, etc. What do you see, if you see anything? Why is the reason why people struggle with that part to get the marketing out and in a good way that evokes emotion and that transports the message?
I think the biggest barrier is still to be fully authentic. And I can understand it when you put yourself out there. In theory, the whole world can see you. I mean, in theory, the whole world can listen to our conversation right now. So that can be a barrier in being true to yourself and fully authentic. And that can lead, especially in companies when there are like 4 or 5 stakeholders involved in the creative process, everyone trying to like balance it out. And in the end, you have a mediocre compromise that doesn't excel in any of those emotional areas that you wanted to evoke in others. So I think this is a problem, not being bold enough to really double down in one creative direction and just go for it, and doing so in a very authentic way. And I have filmmaking friends that have like big production companies with like huge sets and 10 people come there and they have scripted image films. And the customers they have are still like German Mittelstand. They have a lot of money and they just think, okay, we have a big Hollywood production. But to be honest, the output doesn't really touch me because it's so perfectly produced, so polished, that there's nothing left. It's a high quality product, but it doesn't. I don't really remember it. Versus I see some random Casey Neistat video where he talks 10 minutes about how he installed like a soap holder in his shower. And I still remember this video is like 2-3 years old, but he told the story in such a brilliant way with like shitty cameras, shitty setup, but just the way he told the story was so human, so creative, so inspiring. This stick with me. And I think this is something that people really need to understand. Like, be true to yourself, double down on one creative idea for each project. Don't try to have like a compromise on everything, and fuck perfectionism and polishment of stuff. Just get it out there. And this is the way people connect, because they are tired of polished content. That's why you also see, I mean, in the last years, the rise of podcasts, and now on YouTube, the rise of those very authentic, raw vlogs that gain more and more attention, because this is what people want to see, or they want to see your true self and not some perfected version of yourself.
Thanks for sharing. Agree. And there is a reason why people listen 3 hours to Joe Rogan's podcast episodes.
Yes, and there's a reason why Kamala, I mean, I don't want to go into politics, but if you compare the podcast appearances of Kamala Harris and the podcast appearance of Donald Trump, there was definitely a significant difference. Also, in, I don't know if authenticity, but at least in how much you got yourself out there. And I would say there was one reason why the election went the way it went.
I love your take on that. The marketing analytics on that, I fully agree. One looked a lot like scripted, as you say. It was an agenda, a script, and a list to tick things off. I have to appear in XYZ podcast because that's what you do. Versus the other approach is, okay, I'm willing to let myself be seen and heard.
Yeah.
And that ties back to what you said, what I appreciate most from what you shared, the boldness, the calling to trust and be bold in the message and in what you want to say. Which I feel is the component that sometimes keeps people from, or helps them to or lets them stick too much to the script in making it want to fit to a marketing message, or want it to tick all the boxes of how you should be creating something.
Yes, and I mean, those boxes don't exist. Like, no one especially the people that grow very fast on social media, especially the ones that don't look at previous best practices, but they just like maybe combine them, get inspired by them, but then just do their own thing, and do so in a very bold manner, in a consistent manner. And this is what people want to see. They want to see new stuff and not the same format recycled for the 100th time.
Love it. And it's a great bridge over to your newest venture, walking your own way and creating your own path. Tell us a little bit about that. It's called Public, but it's written a little bit differently. What exactly are you doing there?
Public with a Y. It started end of December in San Francisco at a Y Combinator hackathon. That's also the name because it has like a YC in it. And still Public. It was a fun project because I was diving deep into the personal branding space, because I believe this is the best way to gain this trust and attention in order to distribute your products. And still a lot of people struggle with it. So my thought was, also after diving deep into it myself and experiment a lot with LinkedIn content, was to start with the content creation itself and help people to get their thoughts out there. Because like a couple of months ago, the options you have when you wanted to create regular LinkedIn content was A, do it completely yourself, but many people struggle with the writing part. B, hire an agency. They might produce good results, but it's not really authentic, and it costs a lot of money. And C, use some AI tool, but they often lead to very mediocre content, and they often tell you or try to tell you what to say. So you're just given like a topic, and then they write the whole thing for you, which is also just leads to some slop that no one wants to see. So I thought, like, how can you combine like the best of all those worlds into a product that really works? So what I built with two friends within 3 days was a prototype for a voice-based tool that has like a lot of context about you. So it was an onboarding process that scraped your LinkedIn and every other source it can find like with information about you, and then takes this context to really act as your personal coach. So whenever you then had an idea for a thought you wanted to share online, You didn't have to hold a monologue. You didn't had to start with a blank page, but you could just call your personal content assistant and have a little conversation. And the assistant asks very precise questions to get like a few levels deeper and maybe also help you to get your authentic self out there. And then use this conversation plus all the context it already has to just package it in a nice way that works for like LinkedIn and Twitter posts. That was the MVP we built. We also had like good feedback. Couple hundred people on the wait list that we onboarded. But I noticed a lot of mistakes when it comes to product building and launching, and I noticed especially that this personal branding space is very personal, and everyone has different requirements, different wishes and needs for such a tool. And our more like kind of generic approach was really hard to because it kind of worked for everyone, but not really. And also we were not focused enough on a certain niche, on a certain type of customer and in the beginning, which is, I would say, my biggest learning. Like with every new venture in the future I'm going to start, I try to niche down much more, like very, very narrow in the beginning, because otherwise you have A to Z, like, I don't know, 30 different like kinds of people using your tool, and they all give you different feedback and different needs, and it's very hard to classify, okay, what do I actually like now take and go build when they all want different things. So for many reasons, and also that while the people I was building the tool with were very well aligned when it came to working together, it was a lot of fun. We kind of stumbled into this through the hackathon. Mm-hmm. So we never really thought about, okay, what do we do like after we launch? How do we go on from there? And one of them is starting a family. The other one noticed, okay, this marketing space is not for him in the long run. So we noticed, okay, hey, this is not going to work if we want to double down. So after that was clear, and we had like all those learnings gathered, which was a fantastic experience. And I believe only if you get those reps in, you can actually build products that scale. So since then, I like zoomed out again and went on a little experimentation streak again. On the one hand, I used the insights we had from this public chapter to kind of switch it up into more like a productized agency, where I was building more custom automations for very little amount of customers, but we work together much closer, and help them automate their content. This is what I'm also doing right now as one project. And on the other hand, I was looking into other fields of content automation, because I noticed, hey, okay, this LinkedIn field is interesting and it still has some potential, but I'm not that passionate about it. And I'm much more passionate about video and film, the medium film. So right now that's why I'm like exploring like many other different models and tools on how to leverage everything that's coming out, and when it comes to generative video, mm-hmm. to maybe use YouTube as a lead gen channel, for example. But this is very, very early still, so I haven't built a product around that. But I'm really enjoying those like past two months where like without pressure just tried out many different things, did a few like still agency projects on the side to sustain my life, but really try out a lot of things without having to double down on one thing, because then I'm going to end it. Like that's also something I noticed. Many of my friends are building in the AI field right now, and it's a very chaotic, anarchic field, because there's so much happening, and like it could be that everything you're working on will be gone or will be irrelevant in 2 months when one of the big companies like comes out with a new model or new interface that just does it 10 times better and much cheaper. So you really need to be clear that the direction you're doubling down on has some kind of mode that is not endangered to be wiped out by some big tech company in a few months. So I think it definitely, especially in this volatile field, it makes sense to really think deeply about the direction you want to go in, and really think, okay, what is the mode that I can create fast? So this is what I'm doing right now. Yeah.
Thank you. Tell people those who get curious now to follow along with whatever else is going to come, where best do they find you?
Probably LinkedIn. I'm also experimenting with YouTube, but I'm going to start a new channel probably where I'm really document this build in public journey from day zero. this channel doesn't exist yet, but I mean, I'm sure once it exists, you can also link it in the show notes.
Of course, and we'll have all the existing links here for everyone. So if you listen to this now or you catch this as video, see below or find it somewhere in the description. It's all here. It's absolutely worth following. It's very interesting. One thing I want to say for what you shared from the first part of that project, I love the idea that you had to say the assistance someone gets in content creation includes the conversation that the tool interacts with you to encourage you to go deeper within, to find these things. Because from my own experience working with entrepreneurs, the main struggle I saw for them in anything related to marketing or messaging or content writing, speaking, has always come down to, I'm not really clear about myself. I lack clarity in what exactly it is that I want to do or say, who exactly this is for. So it's an inner thing. So it's not a matter of having a process that walks you through. There should be a hook and then there should be 2 lines of this and that, but it's rather a process of inner clarity. So I love the idea that you had to give support on this element as well by the tool giving questions and helping to go deeper and find more clarity.
And for this, I feel voice is very, very interesting. And I mean, the underlying concepts and ideas that we use to build this, I'm definitely continue exploring them, and maybe from a slightly different angle. But I'm very bullish on the whole voice aspect, and there's so much cool stuff happening right now. And I think this is the easiest way to really get this personal clarity and convey your thoughts, because just that's the most natural way we communicate as humans. And now is the very interesting time to leverage this.
Absolutely agree. Taking another deeper look at AI overall. I mean, you just shared what it looks like when you're building in the space. There's this, I mean, because there's so many things are moving, the danger of being outdated fast. Okay. So this is all using AI as a tech tool for support one way or the other. What is your bigger or broader perspective on AI? Maybe where is that taking us? Is it going to stay something like a assistance tool or productivity tool, or where is that going to go? Is there more? Is there not more? What is your view on that?
I mean, if I would know, then I would be rich. But I think I really notice this whenever I get out of my bubble of people that are like dealing with AI developments every day, and I don't know, talk to my parents or talk to other friends that are not that deep into it, how little people think or care about those AI developments and how it will or might change the world. So the general thing is, I don't think society is ready, and I think that's going to be a problem. So I'm not that optimistic in that regard, at least right now, because I believe the disruption will be crazy, because in general, people tend to think in linear progressions, and I also can't really fully comprehend what exponential change really means. I can comprehend that it will be wild, but I can't comprehend what exactly it means. And this is what we're currently at, full-on exponential change, because this technology will disrupt everything. There's been a very interesting essay online. It's called AI 2027. It's also, I think, co-written by some of the early OpenAI researchers, where they kind of draw a timeline on the next 2 years, what will happen. And one of the main arguments in that essay is that at least like starting next year, AI will completely autonomously continue to develop further AI models. And then we're in this flywheel effect where like it's kind of I mean, humans will still be in the loop, but I think there's going to be a certain point when those models are so powerful and improving themselves that like the exponential change fully kicks in. And this is then going to be very interesting, because this will, I mean, for now, for many people, AI is like, okay, ChatGPT, whatever, but this will affect every single aspect of life. Like I don't know, I was recently looking into a startup that is using AI for materials discovery, a process that has like usually takes like 20, 30 years to come up with for example, new catalyst. And now they built like a robot lab that can do like 100 times faster experiments, and they get all this data, train their own model on it, and suddenly they can come up with new materials much faster, which then affect like fuels and how we can leverage hydrogen. So the scope of all of this is extremely wide. It affects every aspect of life, and this is something I'm excited about, but I'm worried about the lack of comprehension that a lot of people have about it. I mean, I'm not saying that I comprehend it, but at least I can see that like big change is coming. On the other hand, I was actually yesterday reading an interesting study about the status quo of AI usage, where they looked at like 25,000 employees across Denmark, like huge large scale study about how the usage of AI chatbots in their work affected their productivity. And turns out it didn't really affect their productivity. They had maybe like a 3% time saving, but the time they saved, they used on like managing the AI tools they were leveraging. And it didn't affect working hours, it didn't affect salaries. And I think this is also an interesting reality check, because everyone is saying, oh, fuck, AI is disrupting everything. Like, but the world is still very slow. Like, you might have the perfect ASI in some lab, but until it's fully like being implemented in every industry and every company, that will take a while. So I'm torn in between exponential change, everything is going crazy, but still, okay, calm down and like look at the status quo, and it's not moving as fast as you might think sometimes when just looking at the like sterile developments coming from those labs, because until they actually have real world implications, that might take a while. Those are like my rough thoughts about it. But maybe like regarding the study, I also think one big reason for that, why it doesn't really have much impact, is because they still like looked at traditional companies with traditional corporate structures. And as we already talked about in the beginning, I don't think that's the way to go moving forward. And that doesn't help with this agency that is needed for individuals to fully leverage those tools. So I think the impact is much bigger when, for example, you look at solopreneurs that can definitely work much faster now.
Thank you for elaborating. I love that. What I'm hearing is you say there's a huge width at the moment of different, as well, awareness, but also use cases, from the lab situation, high tech, and the craziness that is already there, where people go like, oh my goodness, 100x faster or better, or more efficient, or whatever it is, up down to, if I go back home into the village that I come from, and people look at me, yeah, I heard there's ChatGPT. Like, have you tried? Well, I used it like Google once. And then, you have exactly the bandwidth that you've just shared about, and also the challenges that come with that. I do feel sometimes it is the speed that we have and the pace with all of these things. And AI is just one expression of all of that, which is guiding us a bit, I feel. And by the way, I would love the link of the study, so we can also link that for people who are interested, if you're open to share that.
Happy to share.
So very black and whitish saying it may be that we're experiencing at the moment through this AI development what collapsing time and timelines means, actually. And this is where we go back to consciousness, when we know, okay, this is part of where we are going, right, as humanity as well, which I feel, and I'm curious to go over to that part now, what you feel about that when we talk about personal growth and agency as one of the skills of the future that we need back as humans. So somehow this is forcing us maybe more into that direction, or at least trying to motivate more people to become curious to pursue that path. So I'd be curious to hear how you kind of came into that industry, or how it found you. How did you get passionate about personal growth or the consciousness journey?
I think that's something I've always been interested in subconsciously. I think I'm also very fortunate with the way my parents raised me. They always gave me a lot of freedom and didn't judge me. I could do pretty much whatever I want, and they supported me in doing so. And I always had my mom like unconditionally loving me and being able to reflect with her and giving me honest feedback and helping me grow. So I don't know, that's something that deeply inherited also in my upbringing, which I'm aware that not everyone has the privilege of. So I try to be patient with people who are not like thinking that way and constantly trying to improve and reflect, or whatever that actually means. Because I'm sure if I would have had a different upbringing, I would be totally different as well. But then, I mean, I read books. I think one book that very shaped me early on was The Courage to be Disliked. I don't know the author, it's some Japanese author, but a very, very good book. It's like a dialogue between like an old philosopher and a young man, where he's sharing a lot of learnings of when it comes to just forging your own path, which then comes back to the agency aspect. And then in general, I mean, I like journaling. I like breath work, like things that calm me down. And I try to be very deliberate when it comes to digital usage, because I notice, especially like social media, it's kind of hurting my self-awareness. And that is something that's not easy. And I have times where I'm definitely more on the addicted side of online usage, social media usage, etc. Where I'm like, I don't know, listening to podcasts to fall asleep and listening to music here and there. But I try to be very deliberate in what I consume and how much I consume, and also give myself times to just process. I don't know, just go for a walk, or just go for a run without headphones in my ear. I think those are like very mini components in all of this. And I'm not always on the strong side on this journey of self-awareness, consciousness, mindfulness, but it's something I really like exploring and really like to improve in, because whenever I take some steps towards being more mindful, I really notice how it positively affects my life, my relationships. So yeah, I would say that's a quick rundown, but actually I haven't really reflected on it, or like on a third person level, on how I got into it and what I'm doing for it. Interesting question.
Thank you for sharing that. And, I can say my heart is open when I hear someone sharing exactly this, and that this is possible, that there is people who had this type of upbringing, because we need that. It is exactly that. If you had another upbringing, you have to really work to get to this place of trust in yourself, in the world, in others. If that is broken, or any part of that, it is so much harder to do that. Obviously, you can get there, but you need other things first to then be this version of yourself. And I don't know, it fills my heart that there's another generation that is there. I've met more people that, that is to me one proof that the world has been changing, that things have been changing. Not everywhere, but things have been changing, and I love that. And on top of that, I was curious, because you said you traveled that much and you've lived in several countries abroad. How has this also shaped your path in your self-development and maybe in consciousness or mindfulness?
I would say those were probably the chapters in my journey that accelerated this growth the most. I would say the first big chapter was when I was 15. I moved to Australia for half a year and went to a high school there. Again, something very privileged to do, and many parents wouldn't support such ideas. But that was a very cool experience, because for the first time, I was able to reimagine my life and completely reinvent myself, because before that, I never really had an active choice of where I'm going to live, what school I go to, or like those core pillars of your life are pretty predetermined in the first years of your upbringing, even if your parents give you a lot of freedom. And that was for the first time where I was able to fully decide on the place I'm going to live, the lifestyle I want to live. And that really helped me in becoming more self-reliant, and also try out different parts of me. That was actually the first time I really went all in with YouTube for a certain period of time, by just producing YouTube videos about that, my journey there. Which I wouldn't have dared to do in my old German environment for whatever reason. But just like cutting those ties and moving into a new environment, being able to reinvent myself, that really helped. And that also helped in the subsequent chapters. Like I always try to do it one level harder each time, and like always get more uncomfortable in future stations. And this is also a very interesting thing I noticed, because before I went to Australia, of course, this seemed like the crazy thing to do. And of course, I was very anxious about it. But coming back, like I really could feel my comfort zone expanding. And then the next thing I did was like doing exchange semester in Taiwan, moving to Taiwan for half a year. In the COVID times, like it was until like 2 weeks before flying there, it wasn't clear if they actually let us in. They still had the borders closed. We then got a special visa and a lot of chaos. Like basically, like a few couple hundred exchange students being the only foreigners in the country whose language I don't speak, which also before that seems kind of daunting, but afterwards it feels like it's second home for me, and I really love Taiwan. I actually am going back there in June, and again I could feel the comfort zone expanding, and this expansion of the comfort zone has impacts on every part of my life, every part of who I am. So I think traveling, and not this classic touristy traveling of going to like tourist hotspots, but actually more like living in abroad in foreign countries is the best way to grow, because you have a very easy time of reinventing yourself and trying out new things. That doesn't mean you have to go away to find yourself or become a better person. I think that's also a dumb thing to think. You can always improve right here, right in the moment. But it certainly helps, as I can highly recommend everyone to do that.
Thank you for sharing. And I want to point out, celebrating you for that, because even with, and I'm putting that in vertical commas, let's say a great upbringing or a nice upbringing, still what you've just described, all the things you've done, that all takes grit. It's not easy. It's not super easy. It takes decisions, it takes grit, it takes the willingness to keep going, all of these things. It's not the easiest pathway. It is challenging yourself again and again and again, and being willing to fail, being willing to have an experience, see what it's like, and still be good with all of that. And that is just really incredible. So I love the message that you're conveying with that, right? The grit is really what takes people across the line, if you want, and then have the success feeling of what you've described, right? When you come back and you can see how you've expanded, you can see how all of a sudden the comfort zone is way bigger, and what felt challenging then is now like, okay, let's do it again. Easy.
Yeah, well, definitely. And it's something I'm very passionate about. It's also after I came back from Australia, I was for a couple of years also working as a marketing freelancer in this whole high school exchange industry, trying to convey the energy and the message and getting more people to study, or more kids to study abroad for a certain period of time. Because I would say you can actually, very often you can feel and notice in a person if they had such an experience or not. It's just a different energy.
I fully agree. I left after high school and went to the US for a year as an au pair. I needed to get away. I wanted to get away and experience something like that as well. I wanted my own freedom, see what it's like to be somewhere else, etc., etc. But yeah, and I came back, and then with the same passion of trying to find and motivate people to somewhere find a path to leave a country, at least for a couple of months, to have these experiences of just being somewhere where you don't know anyone, potentially don't speak the language or not well, and then just find your pathway. Because I agree to what you say, it definitely changes you in a very positive way.
100%.
Amazing. I feel this is great to come to 3 closing questions I have for everyone. The first one you halfway answered is, what does Trust to Disrupt, the podcast title, mean to you? See if you want to add anything.
What do I want to add? I mean, what do we already say? We said like trust is the new mode. I still believe that, and you need trust in order to change the world, in order to disrupt the world. And the most important starting point is to fully trust yourself. And I mean, this sounds very easy to say. I don't think it's that easy to achieve. But I would just say that like that's the most important thing to keep in mind when you really want to move forward. I don't think I have much more to add, but something you can't emphasize enough, and especially this trusting yourself part is very important.
Thank you. Who comes to mind for you, whoever that is, that you also would love to listen to on this podcast?
Dennis Budin. He's a fellow YouTube friend of mine. I actually met him through YouTube. And he's on a very interesting journey of self-discovery. He also founded a marketing agency, had a YouTube channel, grew it to over 10,000 subscribers, did videos about slow living, mindfulness, and now he moved to Berlin. Met him last week, and to really discover himself again. On the part, he's working as a startup consultant on the side, and he's just a very inspiring person to talk to, with very interesting takes on life in general. So I think he might be a great person to have on the podcast.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. I will definitely look that up and potentially come back to you on that one to maybe make
happy to make an intro.
Cool. The last one, what is any sort of advice or tip or something, impulse you want to give to people who listen, which is usually entrepreneurs, also people who have gone away already, not necessarily starting out, when around the topics that we talk to, can be around entrepreneurship or the future or building something?
I would say it's to really get your voice out there in an authentic way. Share what you're thinking, share what you're learning about, share what you're working on. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be in retrospect, but do so while you go through the journey, and do that consistently for a year. And it will actually have a massive impact. I mean, I haven't even been doing it for a full year. I started LinkedIn posting regularly in November, but it had insane impact on my trajectory. I met so many cool people through it, so many opportunities. And this is just like, it would be a shame to let this opportunity go off. I mean, you can say negative things about social media, but social media is really great at in connecting you to the right people. And it can only connect you to the right people if you tell what you're actually thinking about and what you're doing, what you want, and only then the right people can find you. So try that and let life surprise you.
Oh my God, I'm not adding anything. That's a beautiful closing word. Thank you, Leon, so much. That has been such a pleasure meeting you, having this conversation with you. So thank you for being open.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. I hope you really feel inspired and you gain new perspectives for your own ventures to take action. Remember to subscribe to the podcast, download the episode, and share it with one visionary person who needs to also hear this. Also, please leave a 5-star review if that feels aligned on iTunes or on Spotify. That helps to distribute the podcast to more people and to have high caliber guests on for you to enjoy.